Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from Kansas City. We are joined this week by a person the whole state knows, former Kansas City Royal, maybe how everybody in the rest of the state knows you. Now folks know you here in Jackson County as the Jackson County Executive, Frank White. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Let's start off. I've spent the week in Kansas City.
Okay.
I went down to the plaza. I got to talk to people. I got to see some of the where some of the protests maybe got out of control. I think no matter who you are in the country, whatever your views on policing or protest, you've had to be shaken watching the video of how George Floyd was murdered.
Right.
What has been the response in Kansas City that I know folks reach out to you as a leader on these issues? What has been the response so far?
Well, it's a lot of passion, obviously. As I watched that on television, you feel outraged. You feel like you wish you could reach through the TV and pull the officer off of Mr. Floyd. His hands are cuffed behind him, and the officer just felt so comfortable doing that because he had his hand in his pocket and just continually ground his knee into Mr. Floyd's neck. So from a perspective of an African American, you've seen a lot of police brutality over your lifetime, but this was pretty blatant. And then you also had I had a lot of surprise and eventually became resentment toward the other three officers that were abetting in this crime. I mean, it seemed like one of them would have had the sense to take I think Mr. Chauvin off of Mr. Floyd's neck, whether it's your superior or not. I mean, right is right, wrong is wrong.
There's a narrative come out early. I almost hated to see it was defund the police. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't believe that's really going to happen in places like Missouri, and maybe not any place. To me, to actually start to change things, to have a better place, to have a better country to live in, you're going to have to involve the police. And I've seen some people talk about maybe like teachers. If you're a teacher and you get a bachelor's degree, if you go get your master's, you make more money.
Right.
Maybe if you're a police officer and you go back and get social work training, you make more money. Is there a way to incorporate? I know a lot of police officers, and none of them even defended what happened. Mm-hmm. They, I think, realize that there's an issue, but I think maybe is there a way to bring them in as part of the solution?
I think that sometimes we may be asking our police to do a little too much.
Yeah.
That's probably why you brought up the social work angle of it. I think that you're a policeman at 22, 23, 24 years old, and there's no way you're going to know all these issues. I think a lot of empathy on behalf of the police would help, especially when you're dealing with the poor and when you're dealing with the homeless. Sometimes they're easily targeted. And I think these are the things that I would suggest to the police department is look at your policies. When someone's handcuffed, you've got them. There's no reason to rough them up any more than that. I think these are what people have seen all their lives in the black communities.
Yeah. And
I know as a parent, my kids, I've always cautioned them to where to go, when to get home. There was that old saying that if you see us running down the street, we must have stole something. So now everybody's trying to stop you and check you out and things like that. So, and I was a senior in 1968 when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and my high school, Lincoln High School, was sort of where all the protesting started. After that, because we thought we should have a day off, and the police surrounded our school, didn't want to let anybody out of school, and then there was tear gas, and you throw tear gas into a high school, people aren't going to just stay there, they're going to have to get out of there. And so that's really what kicked that off. So that's why I say empathy, the police being able to look at a poor person, look at an African American, and say, and try to put yourself in their spot and say, am I going to make their misery worse by what I'm doing, or am I going to help them get through this? And I think a lot of it has to go to just having a lot more empathy for the people that they're dealing with on a daily basis.
Speaking of empathy, Kansas City area has been hit particularly hard by the COVID virus. It looks as though I've seen Kansas City start to reopen. I see still there's some pretty tight regulations, but let me talk to you about a person that watches this show. Maybe they're a gun store owner from West Plains, or they're a conservation agent from Reynolds County. They don't have COVID in their area. There's no definition of a pandemic. They don't understand why when they come to Kansas City, you have to stand outside or wait in line to get something. Maybe can you help me explain to that person why Kansas City is different than the rest of the state?
Well, Jackson County we're over 500,000 people, and it's population. It's our close proximity to Kansas City, to Wyandotte County, Johnson County in Kansas. A lot of our people work across state lines both ways. So it was really important to us to kind of get on the same page with our orders and as close as we can, close as we could actually. And I think that the people in the rural communities, like you say, don't necessarily see that. But then again, in the rural communities, if someone were to get sick with COVID, then they would have to come to Jackson County. And so that's why we have to make sure that we take care of our safety net hospital, which is Truman, and make sure that they have everything they need, capacity, so forth. And that's why that's the big difference is population would be the reason why some orders are more stringent than others. I know the governor was, in talking to him on numerous occasions, that's why he left it up to the county and the city in Kansas City, St. Louis, because our situation was totally different than what he was seeing in the rural communities. So he allowed us to go a little bit more stricter than his orders.
The local control is not, I think it helped him because local control is not something he just started. You said numerous conversations with him. Mm-hmm. Those conversations, from what I understand, started when he got elected.
Yes.
He started reaching out and building those relationships. Mm-hmm. And I think those have paid off for him in this situation.
Well, I think so too. I mean, we have a weekly call at 9 o'clock every Tuesday, and I think this week he moved it to Thursday, and everything was just updates. All the county executives and commissioners that wanted to call in on that line could call in. He gave his update. He also had Dr. Williams on with him, and he really just gave us an opportunity to ask questions and also an opportunity to tell him what's going on in our counties, and that kind of helped him in some of the decisions that he made too. So I think he knows that we're engaged and that we're consistently on the call and really looking for it all the time to hear what he has to say. You
mentioned folks at Truman. Charlie Shields and those folks have done the Lord's work the last few months.
Well, they've been our safety net hospital, and one of the few things that Jackson County owns that's actually in the city other than the stadiums. And so we've really gone the extra mile to fund Truman to make sure they have what they need. And, you know, we started this year with the Joe Runyons Act because Joe came down with COVID, Representative Joe Runyons, and so that was a $10 million funding to Truman, and we also have our own we have a health department also. So funding the health department, funding Truman, and tomorrow I will be signing a resolution from the legislature to award $27 million to Truman from the CARES Act. So that will happen tomorrow. So we're doing all we can to give Truman what they need to. Obviously, it's never going to be enough. But with the monies that we have, we're doing the best we can to make sure that they are in a good position if this turns and gets worse at some point.
The question I have to ask, we're talking about COVID, we're talking about maybe we're in the recovery phase for my Uncle Bob in Lee Summit is, well, when will the Royals play this year?
Well, Uncle Bob, I live in Lee Summit too, so I think they're really trying to play. I heard that they want to try to get something by the middle of this month or next month, but I think the biggest issues they're having right now is negotiating with the players union, trying to get the players who are making $20 million to take $6 million, and then you get the new players who are in their first year. What do you do for those guys? So normally in these negotiations, it's what's going to be on the back end, and with negotiations coming up next year, then the union is probably saying, well, if we do this year, what's it going to mean when it gets to negotiations? So and typically, when I came up, we had to have strikes. We got locked out. Yeah. We had to go all these things for benefits and higher pay and things. But with everybody making a lot of money, the players, the owners, I can't say the owners this year, but you didn't have any type of union issues. Every 4 years it was boom, let's keep moving. For this year, this next one has a feel it may be a little bit different.
Well, I always wish the Royals good luck. Of course, unless they're playing the Lord's team, the Cardinals. Oh. Then it's hard to support. But there's one question I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
There are people all around Kansas City who have cheered for you on the field at Kaufman, that have voted for you. I mean, you win by such large numbers, and maybe some of those folks or folks like them have been skeptical about issues when African Americans would point out these issues. They didn't see them, and they couldn't really relate to them. Now that I would say everybody in the world has saw that video, there's some people that maybe they're not at a protest, but their mind is opening up to different, maybe some of the things they'd heard was right. what is something that you could recommend that somebody whose mind is beginning to open up and beginning to change and beginning to realize it's in all of our interest to address this? What's something they could do?
Well, I think that if you are living in a community where you don't see black people or where you don't deal with a lot of minority people, I think the thing, if you're really interested in finding out what's going on, if you were truly shaken by what you saw on TV as it relates to Mr. Floyd, then I would say reach out to your law enforcement in your community, have some conversations about tactics that they use, what their policies are, talk to your elected officials. And I would also maybe schedule some town halls, have some people come in to speak, whether it be from the universities or some of the organizations around Missouri that come in and talk about black issues and some of the things that black people face, and they can give you a real good idea of what you can do to get involved. I mean, I was really struck by the diversity of the crowds in the protests around the country, and because I think a lot of people were shaken by what they saw.
Well, Mr. County Executive, I really appreciate you coming in.
No,
We'll come back and maybe as we talk about, maybe as Kansas City's back in the full swing and maybe baseball season's in and the Chiefs start playing, you can come back and we'll talk politics and sports.
Well, I'd love to. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Be right back with our socially distanced opinion maker panel, Representative Jack Bondon and Senator John Rizzo after this.
Mike Parson served in law enforcement for 22 years, a former sheriff. Parson is tough on crime. Governor Parson is standing up for victims, investing in better mental health services, and cracking down on violent crime and drugs. Governor Parson's anti-crime initiatives have led to the arrests of hundreds of violent criminals and gang members. A former sheriff, a conservative, tough on crime governor. Mike Parson is making Missouri families safer.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back this week in Missouri Politics. Senator John Rizzo from Independence, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Representative Jack Bondon running for Senate down in Cass County, right?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Welcome back.
Thanks, Scott.
Let's start, Senator Rizzo. The issue I think is on, I don't know how you could be in this part of the state or really any part of the country right now and not think about the protests that are going on.
Sure.
What I've seen is maybe there's some folks who reflexively just never took the side. They had not experienced the issue with the police and they were skeptical. When you see the George Floyd thing, I think even some cops that serve in departments that may not have this are like, okay, what can you do to stop that type of thing from happening? And I've seen some of the initial stuff come out to defund the police. That doesn't seem real to me. What about body cameras? What are some things that could actually be done to prevent something like that from happening?
Sure. I think people like us sitting around here have had advantages that other communities haven't had. And I think that we've really got to look at more transparency when it comes to the use of excessive force. And we've really got to take a very strong look at chokeholds and what the reason for having them is. And as well as a lot of the other issues that are plaguing the black community that have for a long time economically and just a variety of issues that encapsulate the whole community outside of policing as well.
Representative Bondon, to me, you look at this situation has become a matter of self-interest. If you're in the business community, if you're someone that just wants to see a better world, the issue has to be addressed. We're not going to have the type of world we want to have without addressing the issue. When people talk, though, I think talking at the police right now, I know there's a lot of anger, but a real solution is going to have to be not defunding the police, but making the police part of the solution.
I think that you're right, Scott. I think the police are part of the solution here. I think that the idea that we throw the baby out with the bathwater is a foolish one. The police are the ones who are called when folks need help. The police are the ones that respond when someone's in distress. To those who want to defund the police, and I realize even moderate Democrats aren't saying that anymore. Joe Biden came out against it, but those who want to defund the police, imagine your city for 1 week without the police. Imagine how that would look. Now, they have to work with the business community, with their local neighborhoods, and we need better neighborhood policing. But in the grand scheme of things, the police are part of the solution, albeit this started with the wrongful act of a police officer.
Yeah. There are things, you look at teachers, right? Public employees, just like police officers. Maybe there's ways to, instead of saying, oh, you're bad, oh, we have to add social, I mean, to me, if you go to a classroom, if a teacher gets a master's degree, they get paid more because they're better trained. Is there not some ways that I think it would behoove a lot of communities to create opportunities to pay for their police to go get a degree in social work? And then compensate them for that. I mean, there's got to be, I don't think it's a real thing in Missouri to say you're going to defund a police department. But I think there's a lot of police that would want to be part of a solution, and like anything else, like a teacher, you make it in their interest to go get more training, and maybe collectively you avoid things like this.
Yeah, I believe defunding the police is just not an option. We can look at how different things, different dollars are being spent, but defunding the police is not an option. I agree with Joe Biden wholeheartedly on it. But I will say, kind of in agreement with Jack, that whatever solutions happen, you have to have buy-in from the police departments as well. The officers that I've known have been great officers, not like the officer in Minneapolis that just was a monster that murdered George Floyd. And you have to, in order for there to be substantive change, police officers have to buy into it, and the community has to buy into it as well. And you're never going to be able to push one side hard enough that it's just not tenable that way. Everyone has to sit at the table and have this conversation that we haven't had for decades, for longer than decades. And we all have to have buy-in, and we all need to get together and try to make substantive changes that will make both sides happy.
Let's talk about COVID-19. I think maybe we're finally coming to the part where it's a recovery and not just we're in the middle of it. Maybe there's certainly the data would show that there's more testing and there's fewer people in the hospital. So it seems like Governor Parsons come out and said they're going to kind of wind down the state response and turn over local communities. I think in places like Cass County, they're going to welcome letting the local folks be in charge.
Absolutely. Our folks are raring to go in Cass County, Scott, and all down through the folks I've been visiting in Henry County, all the way down through Barton County.
This may have
the
been
folks are ready to go.
Most heavy-handed thing since the burnt district that's happened down through here.
Yes, you bring up local culture. Right? Thanks for coming down to Cass County yesterday, Scott. The folks are raring to go. There is a lot of pent-up demand out there, and I will tell you that we have seen, even in spite of the COVID and the shutdown, we have seen tax revenue up, which means people are out spending money in the places that they can, and I hope for a speedy and quick recovery to this.
It's a very diverse state. There are places that I could tell, staying down at the plaza in Kansas City this week, that you could see that people had on masks, and I think it's immature to mock someone with a mask on. I mean, they're doing it because they want it for their safety. And you could tell there was a lot of concern. I go down to Harrisonville, and I'm sure there theoretically are restrictions, but I had one of the best breaks I ever had in Pleasant Hill. I don't think they care about the government restrictions. It's not good when the government's giving orders and the citizens are ignoring them.
That's exactly right. It is okay when the citizens want to have their own self-direction. You know, everything does not begin and end in Jefferson City. We see that. That's come from the bottom up in a lot of places, and that's why you're seeing folks getting pushed, a lot of pressure on reopening this economy. Now, I think you make the wisest point, though, Scott, which is that what you see in urban areas is more reflective of the type of environment in an urban area than you see in the rural areas. If you go down to the folks in Bondon County and you want to explain to them about why they should wear masks and why their businesses should be closed when they have had 0 cases, you can't sell that story.
Well, it's not logical.
No, it's not. And
you're asking them to go snipe them.
And so as you come up north, closer to the cities, we've seen more cases. The folks react to it a little bit more strongly.
I was excited to have you on because you have Lee Summit in your district.
Yeah.
You have Belton,
yes,
peculiar
please,
places that are suburban.
Right.
And then the place you're running in now goes all the way to places like Barton County where
absolutely.
You're selling a pig and a poke. They've been waiting since St. Patrick's Day for this. It's never happened.
Well, I'll let you use the term pig and a poke, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Rizzo, I thought, Missouri Times came out with the list of people that could run statewide in the Democrat Party. There's not a lot of people that jump to your mind. You're someone I saw in the House be able to relate to people, Republicans, Democrats in rural areas and in urban areas. I think it's really true that this state has been hit very disproportionately in urban areas with this virus. The response has been, I thought Governor Parson did a wise thing early on when he let local places kind of be in charge of their own destiny. I think the local places have done what their communities wanted. Your Senate district, I'm going to say even independents folks probably have a different desire from government than your constituents in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But I would also say that I think the state, by and large, benefited from the action that was taken by the St. Louis and Kansas City regions
I agree with that.
Early on, and because the urban cores were the most affected by it, simply because of population and size and the disease.
Well, folks in Missouri are smart people. You take a person down where I'm from in Butler County, Vince Lampy's our presiding commissioner. He had a very different situation than Quentin Lucas, and he responded differently.
Yeah.
To me, that's intelligent. The one thing I think, Jack, it does kind of stick in my craw. So you've been listening to these scientific experts, right?
Right.
They've had projections that, frankly, most all have been very, very wrong. But also, you don't get on CNN with a projection of, okay, I think this is bad, but we're doing okay. You get put on CNN with a projection of Black Plague, everyone's going to die.
That's right.
So those haven't come true. But this has been a very serious virus. It's affected a lot of folks, still in nursing homes right now, very serious. But I saw the scientific experts say, okay, you can't go to the lake, right? You're a bad person. You're going to hell first if you go to the lake. But you can protest. Now, I think going to protest is their right and much more important than going to the lake. But science shouldn't really make a difference, right? It's either science or it's not science.
There's no distinction. The virus doesn't care whether you're protesting or whether you are at the Lake of the Ozarks in a big pool listening to Blake Shelton. It does not care. The virus doesn't care one way or the other. But the virus does care about things like population density. The virus does care about things like sanitation and healthcare access. And so we've seen different areas who have controlled it differently, and that has been effective for them. Now, I think that you make a very good point too, Scott, about nursing homes and about all of our friends and family members that are in these nursing homes. We cannot lose sight of the fact that we have still a virus that's going around, and when they hit one of these facilities, it can be very damaging. We've got to focus our efforts on where we need them and make sure to let the rest of the people fuel that by fueling the economy.
So, I mean, I do think you want people to take public health experts seriously, but I think protesting is far more important. I think the folks had every right to protest. I mean, there was a man murdered by the government. I think that it's the more people that protest, like in Philadelphia and St. Louis here, the better, right? It shows a bigger point. And there was doom and gloom predictions after Memorial Day. They just haven't come true. Has there been a small uptick? Sure. But the thing that I wrote a column about how maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world, and all the Corona bros were out. It was everything's going to die. I think that you probably, if you want to protest and you're healthy and it makes sense, go protest.
Yeah, I think the peaceful protesters have created a big groundswell of support. As far as the coronavirus impacts of the gatherings, I think we're yet to see what all this is going to look like in a month.
Sure.
I think a lot of these states are still reopening. We've seen upticks, I think, as of today in Texas, Florida, California, Arizona, and these are all states that were kind of reopening. And I don't think we can go back ever to where we were in shutting everything down again, but it's just more about containment at this point, and we're going to have to, it really is just going to have to be a day-by-day situation and finding these hot spots, and you do that through testing. You do that through testing, you do that through contact tracing, and people are going to go out to restaurants, they're going to go to the movies, they're going to do that stuff when they feel comfortable.
Sure.
It doesn't matter if you put an open for business sign on your front door or not. You know, government doesn't reopen things as much as we'd like to think that they do, right? I mean, there are a lot of restaurants and businesses right now that are open, they're doing their social distancing, and unfortunately people just don't feel safe yet.
I'm going to stay for politics for a second. Give me a prediction. How's Trump doing in your Senate district?
Trump's doing fantastically in my Senate district. The people are going to overwhelmingly support our president.
What about Governor Parson?
Governor Parson's doing well as well. I think his message of future of our state and what he's done already is going to ring true to those folks down there.
So really, you've got one of the few swing districts where you actually have a sizable number of Republican constituents, just as Democrats. Most people in the Senate have one or the other, and a lot of them.
Sure.
How's Trump holding up there? Who overperformed in a lot of your Senate district?
He did. He overperformed in 16 by a lot. I would definitely say that he has lost a lot of ground.
I see that number tightening in serious Republican polls.
Yeah.
It's not 19. It's barely. It's not even double digits now.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen a poll, a latest poll in my specific district, but I can definitely say that he has lost a lot of ground since 2016.
Well, let's talk about who gained some ground. Who won the week?
Oh, I think the black community has won the week. I think when NASCAR is saying that you're no longer going to be able to fly a Confederate flag at their events, and Mitt Romney saying Black Lives Matter, they have made some real
Confederate flag
substantive.
people? I just don't. I don't. In my world, I don't see Confederate flag people.
I don't either. But
time for Confederate flag guy to go away. That's not the move.
Yeah, the peaceful protesters have made some real strides toward making some real changes, and I think that by and large they won the week.
Who won the week?
Oh, I think Missouri's health net, safety net hospitals won the week. They got $240 million pulled down from federal funding. And like I said, it's that access to health care that's going to make the difference right now. And those are the places that people go to first.
I mentioned it to Frank White earlier. I mean, really, somebody that I know, Charlie Shields, has done great.
Yeah.
I've got a who won the week for you this week. I'm going to go two. Is there one? Senator Rizzo, your bill about testing was outstanding. It was perfect for the situation. A lot of folks seriously questioned why you were there. That's one reason you can actually say it was good that you were there. And I'm going to say Nikki Strong and the folks at the Nursing Home Association. Right. You know, when you talk about where this crisis is, it's actually in nursing homes, and they very much looking into the future found some money to help maybe deal with where the real crisis is here. We hope you'll help us avoid a crisis next week by joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.
We just finished up this week's show, and I appreciate a second to tell you about a new thing we're doing. I'm a history buff, like I know a lot of you are if you watch the show. We're doing a thing of the history of Missouri. We're going to do it one county at a time. We call it Show Me Missouri. We're going to travel to all 114 counties of the state. We'll have a member of the Farm Bureau, county elected officials, some of your state legislators you see here on the show. We're going to talk about the history, what's happening now in the county, and how the two are interconnected. It's a passion project of mine. If you like history, I hope you'll get involved. Follow us. Go to MissouriTimes.com. You can see it. We'll probably branch it off into its own social media at some point. But you've been so good to us at the Missouri Times, the show, different papers. This is a passion project that I hope you'll enjoy. It's called Show Me Missouri. The history of Missouri, one county at a time. The first county was Polk County. We had a great time. And we hope you'll go to MissouriTimes.com, find a little bit about it. And if you like the history of the state, I hope you'll enjoy it.